Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, I want to title this report, The More Things Change, the more things stay the same. You know, that's an old saying, and it's harder to see that today because changes are taking place at a much more rapid pace. However, I want to relate this to my life, and this might be interesting to some of you because years ago, before all these new types of tackle and everything else that's on the market today, I used just a couple things through all the years. And I'm telling you, including doing hundreds of TV shows, just a couple of baits that were my go-to baits that at the time I felt I was so good with these that I had more confidence in them than anything else. And here's what those two baits were. Number one, and I mean a big number one, was a bucktail jig, and especially in black and blue. You know, the old timers used to say red and white was the color. Red indicated blood, and it made the fish really strike. But black and blue became my bait, my lure that I used all over the continent, not just the United States, all through Canada, every place I'd go. When I was a lot younger and first started doing my shows, I used to be made fun of because I'd go out in a boat, some little old rowboat or something that we started with, and I'd have a paper bag of some lures that I was going to use, probably a half dozen jigs or something, and that would be it. And we'd do a whole show that would go all over the nation. Now, was that foolish on my part? Perhaps, but it worked for me, and I caught tons of fish on a 3 or 4 inch black and blue bucktail jig. My buddy Louis Barkley tied most of them for me. And it was wonderful. And then as the years passed, I started becoming more exposed to some of these other companies and other lures, and my lifestyle changed. And so now I've got box after box of every type of lure you could think of. And yet, have I forgotten the bucktail jig? Well, this year I made a trip up to Massawepie, and we were fishing for smallmouth bass, and they weren't hitting anything, but I could see them feeding on the surface. And so I thought, I wonder if I went back and used a bucktail jig like I used to use, would they hit it? Whatever they're feeding on, maybe they'll think it's that. And so I put a bucktail jig on, and immediately, and I've been fishing with other of my favorite new lures and not catching a thing, I started catching fish. And it saved the day. We caught a number of fish using bucktails, different sizes, but basically 1/8 ounce bucktail jigs. They looked like the minnows the fish were feeding on. And the other thing that I discovered this summer is, because for years and years I haven't used Mr. Twister type things with the twisty tails. Oh no, companies are making much more accurate looking soft plastic baits. And so I used those. But one day I was on the Grass River and the fishing was really tough, and yet I knew there were fish where I was casting. So I had some twisters. I don't know why, but I had some 3-inch twisters in my pocket. And so I put one of those on an 1/8 inch, I think it was either 8th or 16th, but I'm going to say an 1/8 ounce ball-headed jig. And bam, I started catching fish. Not by fishing them like I normally do with jigs, but by casting out and just reeling right straight back. And those fish loved that curly tail going through the water. So what's this all about? What I'm trying to say is that some of the things that we used years ago to make us just love fishing and to catch all kinds of fish still might be as good as anything else out there. And so that's why I started this show with the more things change, the more ways they stay the same. I guess I ought to learn how to speak. Anyway, folks, until next time, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.